Hey, you're listening to the Follower of One podcast. We want our faith to matter full time, whatever we're doing, but especially at work. Here's today's podcast. So I have been doing this vision cast. The vision casts are my idea of just having a conversation to help people understand some of the ideas behind Follower of One. And one of those ideas is that God uses each of us and he has a calling for each of us. And Dale and I were talking about this. Dale Young of CoachDale.com is my guest today. And he and I were talking about this. And so I invited him to be part of this vision cast today. Dale, tell everyone hi.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm glad to be here.
I'm glad to have you. We were talking a little bit about calling. Tell us a little bit about your definition of calling and how you see God calling us in the workplace.
Well, going back to my definition, it's really one that has evolved because way back in 1992, before I was actually a believer in Jesus or a follower of Jesus, I'll put it that way. I might have believed in him, but I didn't follow him. Way back in 1992, I was working a job in Australia. I was making some crazy money, and that crazy money was what I thought I wanted at the time. And they started taxing some of the benefits that we were getting for being in Australia. And because of that tax, all of us at lunch were just griping and, we're going to quit over this thing, and all this sort of stuff. And what we're talking about is a little bit of money compared to a great big bonus that we were getting. And it's like, this really doesn't make sense. But, we were all caught up in our arguments and all that sort of stuff. And then out of my mouth comes these words that I was just surprised to hear myself say. And the words was, well, this is just a job, not a career. And it was really in that moment that I realized that my heart had been telling me for many years, been telling my brain, hey, you need to do something bigger, something different. You're made for something more. And so that 1992 statement really sank in, and over the next 30 years, I changed careers, changed jobs, changed a whole bunch of other things, became a true follower of Jesus in 1998. And through all that process, everything just kept getting bigger and bigger. I went through a phase of, okay, I need a career. Well, I've got a career. That's not big enough. What do I need now? Well, I need passion. Well, that's not big enough. What do I need now? Well, I need a mission. Well, that's not big enough. What do I need now? I need purpose. Purpose is pretty big. It took me a while to get past purpose, but purpose turned out to not be big enough for me. And what I ended up with in 2022, 30 years later, was calling. And calling to me is bigger than all of those things I mentioned. It's bigger than anything else because it's a God-inspired, God-given, God-pulled. God wires us with a particular calling, with a particular purpose.
Okay.
But it's deep in our heart, right? It's not necessarily something that's just going to come out. And so really, I think I've been around coaching for more than a decade now. I find that people don't just stumble into their calling. They have to be working at it. They have to dig it. Proverbs 20, verse 5, the calling in a man's heart is like deep water, but a person of understanding will draw it out. Now, that person of understanding can be yourself, but it's going to take a while. So that's where I say work with a coach and really pull that purpose, pull that calling out of your heart.
We're talking about calling. And so Dale's explaining how calling is bigger than these other things like mission and that type of thing. And so calling is God given, right, Dale?
I believe God wires us when he creates us in our mother's womb. He creates us not only with gifts and talents and purposes, but he also gives us a calling. And he sets up events. God's in control, right? God uses everything for our benefits and for his benefit if we'll follow him. And so I really do believe that he has actually wired some sense of calling. And then he sets up events that help us as we grow to become even more plugged into that.
Does it happen in moment by moment types of things, or is this a long and deep thing?
I think a lot of it just depends on how much energy and thought and effort you put into it. I think that there are going to be some times when you're not ready for the calling yet. You're only ready for a piece of the calling, and you just have to take that piece and follow that. But there are going to be times when, for me, it took me 30 years to really get to the fact that calling was what I was after. But I've been working towards it. I've been doing pieces of it all along.
Yeah, and what I thought was neat about the way that we pulled this together, you and I was at this phase where we'd been talking about how the ministry got created, but the whole point is trying to put our vision to work, making our vision actually make a difference in the world, making it real. And that's where I thought the calling kind of overlapped. Do you kind of see this calling then as maybe as the sum of the things that God gives us to do in Ephesians 2:10? Where he says, we've been created in Christ Jesus for good works?
I believe it's more than just a sum. I believe it's a multiplication is really what it is. It's not a linear thing. As you go through and you get more pieces, you get more power as you go through it. And you get more joy, you get more peace, you get more direction. So that's what I see has been happening in your life, Mike. I mean, I've been around you since 2014, way even before follower-of-one, right?
Yeah.
And when you started follower-of-one, it was like, well, I'm not sure exactly where he's going, but I see he's passionate about it. I'm going to help him where I can, type of thing. And just as you've gone through this for the last however many years, 7 years now, almost.
Yeah.
As you're getting through that, your vision is getting clearer. Your direction is getting more purposeful. I don't think that we're meant to necessarily be straight on line right to start with, because we're going to miss experiences that God has for us if we do that.
Yeah. Well, and I think, I agree with you. I believe that's part of the reason why the marketplace mission trip is so important to me. And we'll probably talk about that more in the next vision cast, because that's the first step we have in Follower of One to helping us put our faith to work, is to practice doing these 5 daily habits and then watch Jesus use them in our lives. Right?
Right. When I first went through that, I thought, wow, these are really good, simple daily habits that anybody can use at any time. You don't have to be on a marketplace mission trip, but it's a great training ground to be on a marketplace mission trip with others and just see how can you put this to use. And the more I went through it and the more I started doing it, the more it was like, okay, this is a good tool. Now, what else is for follower-of-one? What's the next step beyond that? And then you came up with the whole idea of community. And I think that's a great idea. In my coaching business, I focus on 3 things. I focus on identity, I focus on community, and I focus on calling. And, the identity, is kind of who are you and what are you doing? Well, that's kind of the 5 daily habits. The community is how do you get people around you to support you and that you can support, so that you're all moving in the same direction. And then the calling is really putting the words to the feeling that God has wired in you, so to speak, from the start, to say, this is what I was meant to do. This is what I was created to do.
I would even call community our 6th habit, because if we just have this habit of being isolated all the time, then we don't ever get any better. It's community and the association with others that directs us, because I don't know if you've noticed this. I've noticed this. We're very much like the people around us. And so I think regionally, even, it has an impact on us. It has an impact on us where we work, or the people that we associate with, the people that we give access to our life to, right? They have an impact on us, don't they?
Absolutely. And it really actually goes down to how God created us, because he created us, our brains are wired, even as infants, to reach out to others. You can see it in an infant. Matter of fact, I saw a great video where this mother and very, 3-month-old, maybe something like that, he could focus, and he could, wiggle a little bit, but wasn't standing or anything like that. And, she was playing with him and he was all excited and there was a lot of interaction going on. And then she turns away for just a second and turns back with just a blank face. It's not even a frowny face, but just a blank face, and just stays like that. And you can see the infant is just going crazy, saying, reaching out and trying to touch her and, no reaction. And eventually gets to where he's actually turning away from her, because it's so upsetting to him. And it's a great little video. And just in like 2 minutes, you can tell the power of connection and the power of being in community, even for an infant that young. And so we're wired to be in community. Okay. And, what's kind of the whole teenage years is when teenagers are growing up and they're trying to establish their first foots outside the nuclear family in a good sense, right? So they start being subject to all the peer pressure and all the other stuff, right? Because they're trying to out different communities at this point. It's not just the family anymore. It's also the other communities. And then they'll try that. And eventually, hopefully, they'll become their own, they'll get their own sense of an individual identity, but within a bigger community. And I think that's really what you're trying to establish here in Follower One, is that community of believers that we eventually want to be on a marketplace mission trip full time. We want to be doing our 5 daily habits all the time. And we want that 6th daily habit of community to be part of what we're doing all the time.
I think it's cool, Dale, that God's doing these things. I agree with you. That's part of the reason why I started Follower of One. I knew that I could, and I felt like that was the best way for me to find people who wanted to do something with their faith. Because most of the people that I go to church with, they are already doing things with their faith and they bought into the things they're doing. I was still looking. I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my faith. And so I felt like I needed to create a community for people who are trying to figure that out a little bit. And that's what I think Follower of One is. It's for those of us who are following Jesus and trying to figure out what he would have us do next. And that's the whole point, right? Is what can we do?
Exactly.
So Dale, for people who think that calling is a good idea or they want to do something about calling, what would you have them do next? What's the next step for them?
Well, there's a whole bunch of next steps that could happen. Okay. There's really no singular path to calling. I'm doing a workshop on this Wednesday, January 17th. 11 a.m. I'll find a discount code for Follower One people so that we can recognize them and bring that in. Okay. And I will share revenue that I get from the workshop with Follower One. So you're going to contribute to me and Follower One. But that's going to be 75 minutes of reasons why following your calling is a good thing. Things that will benefit you if you do pick up and follow your calling. So I think that's one piece. I think another piece might be self-development. Just the whole fact of being able to understand yourself better, understand who you are. Like I say, I focus on identity, community, and calling. Knowing who you are at an identity at a core level piece. I've been doing StrengthsFinder work for 5 years now, and it is really one way that it does that. But the community piece, being just part of a community and being somebody that can do all these things together, and finding what your role in the community is. I mean, we all have different gifts and different talents. Some people might be really friendly and can really engage people in an online fashion, and other people are not. They work more behind the scenes, or they're really good at getting these steps done or whatever. That's all part of the whole StrengthsFinder piece as far as what I'm doing. So that's a couple of things that could be a good place to start. But just leaning into even the Follower One mission trip and finding out what pieces work really naturally for you. Okay. I mean, I'm pray for people all the time. Step number 1, pray for people. I do that pretty naturally. I know step number 3. I know my testimony, and things like that, and stuff like that. The part that really is more of a struggle for me is step number 4. How do I serve others? And
Mhm.
so I'm serving others through community lots of times. I'm serving others by being technical support in some cases, because I do come out of a technology background. I'm serving others by doing whatever, just praying for them or whatever. So, finding where you fit within the community that you're trying out, and
Mhm.
how do I show up? And what can I do to help out the leaders? What can I do to volunteer?
Mm.
And lots of times the leaders will say, "Well, what do you do good? Do good? What do you like to do?" Because
Mhm.
if you like to do it, you'll do more of it, right? And so, looking for people just to serve in different places. Follower One, I know, looks for people to serve, but we don't
Mhm.
necessarily have little boxes that people can plug into, right? Ours is pretty open. And, if you have an idea for how you can serve the community of Follower One, I would say reach out to Mike. He is open to you reaching out to him on that.
I want to invite everyone to go to this calling. Tell me the title of it again, Dale.
The title is the Step Into Your Calling Workshop.
Thank you. Step into your calling workshop. We will publish this replay, and then Dale, you can put all that information in the discussion there. On that note, we'll publish that here very quickly as soon as this video is up. So shortly after, I would say by noon Eastern, we'll have this up on our website, and people can check this out, and they can also find your notes down in the discussion underneath, and go to the calling workshop. Investigate, what was it again? Tell me again. I'm sorry, my mind is going.
Step Into Your Calling
Thank you.
Workshop.
Step into your calling workshop,
It's
and
the first step.
not blow up your calling or discover your calling, but step into your calling workshop. I'm grateful for you doing this. I'm grateful for the people listening too. This is fun. I'm learning how to do community. Aren't you? Let's figure it out together, and let's let God use us in the world because we're connected. To me, that's just a cool idea. So I'm grateful that God let me take part in this. Dale, thank you for doing this as well.
You're quite welcome, Mike. I'll do anything I can to support you.
I appreciate it, brother. I'm grateful for you. Thanks, listeners, as well. Thanks for joining us. We'll look for you on the next Marketplace mission trip. We have one of those starting in a week. So Jen mentioned that in the chat. If you're not on the next Marketplace mission trip, just go in the community, go over to the left-hand side and look for Mission Trip 31 and join us. Thanks, everyone, for doing this. Thanks, Thomas. Thanks, everyone on the call. We're grateful. Take care. Follower of One is an online community of people who intentionally follow Jesus every day, at work or wherever we are. Join us at community.followerofone.org, and don't forget to subscribe and share it in your various social media channels. Thanks for listening.